Hi everyone, I'm Emma.
I'm Jack.
Welcome to our channel. Have you ever noticed that some people can talk to almost anyone?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people meet someone for the first time, and within a few minutes, the conversation already feels natural.
Right. They make people feel comfortable, and somehow the conversation keeps going. That's a really common problem.
Yeah, sometimes people think communication is just about speaking more, but it's actually much deeper than that.
So what is communication really about?
I think communication is about creating a connection between people.
A connection.
Yes, it's not only about transferring information. It's about helping another person understand your thoughts, feelings, and intentions.
That's an important difference.
A lot of misunderstandings happen because people focus only on what they want to say, but they forget to think about how the other person receives the message.
So good communication requires thinking about both sides.
Exactly.
I think many people underestimate how important communication is.
They do. People often believe that skills, knowledge, or intelligence are the most important things for success.
But communication affects almost every area of life.
Right, your career, friendships, relationships, and even personal growth are influenced by how well you communicate.
For example, someone may have a great idea at work, but if they cannot explain it clearly, other people may not understand its value.
Exactly. A good idea needs good communication to reach others.
That's interesting because sometimes people blame their ideas when the real problem is how they present them.
Yes, the way you communicate can completely change how people understand you.
Let's talk about daily life. Why is communication important in normal conversations?
Because every interaction we have is a chance to build or damage a relationship.
That sounds serious.
It is. Think about a simple conversation with a friend or family member.
Okay,
If you listen carefully, show interest, and respond with respect, the other person feels valued.
but if you interrupt or ignore what they say, they may feel uncomfortable.
Exactly.
So communication is also connected to how we make people feel.
Definitely. People may forget your exact words, but they often remember how they felt when talking with you.
That's a powerful idea.
Yeah, a person who communicates well is not necessarily the person who talks the most.
Then who is a good communicator?
Someone who knows when to speak, when to listen, and how to create a meaningful exchange.
So listening is a big part of communication.
A huge part.
Many people think communication means being a good speaker.
Right, but speaking is only one side of it. Listening is just as important,
Why do you think listening is so difficult for many people?
because many people listen with the intention of replying, not the intention of understanding.
That's an interesting point.
While someone else is talking, they are already preparing their answer in their head.
So they are not fully present.
Exactly.
Have you ever experienced that?
Of course, everyone does sometimes. It's a natural habit.
So how can we become better listeners?
First, we need to slow down and give the other person our attention.
That sounds simple,
It is simple, but not always easy.
because there are many distractions.
Exactly. Phones, thoughts, stress, and the desire to respond quickly can all affect our listening.
I think people also want to show that they know something.
Yes, sometimes we listen only because we want our turn to speak.
That happens a lot.
Good communication requires humility. You have to accept that the other person may have something valuable to share,
Even if you disagree.
especially if you disagree.
Why especially?
Because disagreement is where communication skills become more important.
That makes sense.
When someone agrees with you, communication is easy. But when opinions are different, you need patience and respect.
So difficult conversations show our real communication ability.
Exactly.
I think another important skill is understanding emotions.
Definitely, communication is not only logical, it's emotional too.
What does that mean?
It means people don't only respond to information. They respond to feelings, tone, and attitude.
For example, the same sentence can sound completely different depending on how you say it.
Exactly.
Can you give an example?
Sure, imagine someone says, "You're late again."
That sounds negative.
Right, but the tone changes everything. If someone says it angrily, it feels like criticism.
But if they say, "Hey, you're late again, is everything okay?" it feels different.
Exactly. The words are similar, but the intention feels different.
So communication is not only about vocabulary.
Right? It includes tone, body language, timing, and emotions.
That's especially interesting for English learners.
Definitely. Many language learners focus on grammar and vocabulary, which are important, but communication skills go beyond that.
Someone can use perfect grammar, but still have difficulty connecting with people.
Exactly.
And someone with simple English can still communicate effectively.
Right? Because communication is about understanding, not perfection,
That's encouraging.
especially for English learners. Many people are afraid to speak because they worry about making mistakes.
They think every sentence needs to be perfect,
Yes, but real communication is about sharing ideas.
not creating a perfect textbook sentence.
Exactly.
I think confidence also affects communication.
Definitely. If you don't trust yourself, you may avoid expressing your thoughts.
You might stay quiet even when you have something valuable to say.
Right.
So how can people become more confident communicators?
Practice is the biggest factor.
Practice talking.
Yes, but also practice expressing your thoughts clearly.
For example, explaining your opinions.
Exactly. The more you practice, the more comfortable you become.
That reminds me of learning any skill.
Right. Nobody becomes good at communication without experience.
You need real conversations.
Exactly.
Another thing I notice is that good communicators ask good questions.
Yes, questions are one of the most powerful communication tools.
Why?
Because good questions show interest and encourage people to share more.
Instead of only talking about yourself.
Exactly.
Can you give an example?
Instead of asking, "Did you have a good weekend?" you could ask, "What was the best part of your weekend?"
That creates a deeper conversation.
Right? Open questions usually lead to better conversations.
So curiosity is an important quality.
Definitely. Curious people often become better communicators because they genuinely want to understand others.
I like that because it changes the goal of a conversation.
Hell,
Instead of thinking, how can I impress this person? You think, how can I understand this person?
exactly. That mindset makes conversations much more natural.
I think many people feel pressure when talking to others,
Yes, they worry about saying the wrong thing or making a bad impression.
especially when meeting new people.
Right, but the best conversations usually happen when people stop trying too hard.
So being natural is important.
Exactly.
Does that mean preparation is not important?
Preparation helps, but communication is not a performance.
That's a good point.
A conversation is not a speech. It's a shared experience.
You don't need to control every sentence.
Right? You need to respond to the moment.
That sounds easier said than done,
It takes practice.
but it's something anyone can improve.
Absolutely.
So if someone wants to become a better communicator, what is the first step?
Start by becoming a better listener.
Interesting.
Because when you truly understand people, your responses naturally become better.
And people feel respected.
Exactly.
I think that's a great place to finish this part.
Yeah, communication is not about having the perfect words. It's about creating understanding between people.
And everyone can improve this skill.
Exactly. Small changes in the way we listen, speak, and respond can create better relationships and better opportunities.
In the last part, we talked about why communication is important. But knowing that communication matters is only the first step. The next question is, how can we actually have better conversations?
Yeah, because many people understand that communication is important, but when they are in a real conversation, they still don't know what to say.
Especially when meeting someone new.
Exactly. A lot of people feel nervous because they think, what should I talk about? Or what if the conversation becomes awkward?
That feeling is very common.
Yeah, even people who seem confident sometimes feel uncomfortable in new conversations.
So having good conversations is not just about being naturally outgoing.
Right? It's a skill that anyone can develop.
I think one of the biggest problems people have is trying too hard to be interesting.
That's a great point. Sometimes people enter a conversation thinking, I need to impress this person.
They focus on showing their own knowledge or telling impressive stories.
Exactly. But interesting conversations are usually not created by one person trying to perform.
They happen when both people feel comfortable sharing.
Right? A good conversation is more like a friendly exchange, not a competition.
That's an important difference.
When you stop worrying about being impressive and start being curious, conversations become much easier.
So curiosity is one of the secrets.
Definitely,
What does being curious look like in a conversation?
it means showing genuine interest in the other person's experiences, opinions, and feelings.
For example, if someone says, I recently started cooking, instead of just saying, that's nice, you ask more.
Exactly, you could ask, what made you want to start cooking? Or what's your favorite thing to make?
That gives the person a chance to share more.
Right, good questions keep conversations alive.
I think many people underestimate the power of simple questions.
They do. Sometimes people think they need very deep or clever questions, but simple questions can create great conversations.
Because the important thing is not the question itself.
Exactly, it's the interest behind the question.
That's a really nice way to put it.
For example, asking someone, how was your day, is a simple question.
But if you ask it because you truly care, the conversation feels different.
Exactly.
Let's talk about small talk. Many people say they dislike small talk.
Yeah, some people think small talk is meaningless.
They think talking about the weather, hobbies, or daily life is boring.
But actually, small talk has an important purpose.
What purpose?
It helps people build comfort and trust.
So small talk is like the first step of a relationship.
Exactly. You usually don't start a deep conversation with someone you just met.
You need to create a connection first.
Right.
That makes sense. Even friendships usually start with simple conversations.
Exactly.
So, what are some good topics for starting a conversation?
A good place to start is something related to the current situation.
For example,
If you're at an event, you can talk about the event. If you're at work, you can ask about a project or someone's experience.
so use the environment around you.
Yes, that makes the conversation feel natural.
What if you don't know the person at all?
You can ask about their interests, experiences, or opinions.
Like hobbies.
Exactly. People usually enjoy talking about things they care about.
But there is also a balance. You don't want to ask too many questions like an interview.
That's true. A conversation should feel like a conversation, not an interrogation.
That's an important point.
A common mistake is asking question after question without sharing anything about yourself.
Then the other person may feel uncomfortable.
Exactly. Good communication requires balance.
So after asking a question, you can also share your own experience.
Right? For example, someone says they like traveling,
You could ask where they've been.
and then share something like, I've always wanted to visit that place because.
That creates a connection.
Exactly.
I think another skill is learning how to continue a conversation.
Yes, many people can start a conversation, but don't know how to keep it going
Why does that happen?
because they don't listen carefully enough.
They are thinking about the next thing to say.
Exactly. But if you listen carefully, the other person usually gives you many opportunities to continue.
Can you explain?
Sure, imagine someone says, I just moved to a new city.
Okay,
A person who listens might notice many possible topics.
like asking why they moved,
Exactly. Or asking how they feel about the new city.
or what they like about it.
Right, one sentence can lead to many directions.
So good conversations are built from small details.
Exactly.
That's interesting because people often think good conversationalists always have many stories.
But actually, they are often good at noticing and responding.
They make the other person feel heard.
Exactly.
Let's talk about awkward silence. Many people are afraid of it,
Yeah, silence can feel uncomfortable.
especially when you're meeting someone new.
Right, but a little silence is completely normal.
Really?
Of course, conversations don't need to be filled with words every second.
That's a good reminder.
Sometimes people panic during silence and start saying random things.
Because they feel pressure.
Exactly, but taking a moment to think is not a problem.
So confidence also means being comfortable with silence.
Yes,
What about when you don't know what to say?
one useful strategy is to return to something the other person already mentioned.
For example,
If someone talked about their job earlier, you can ask more about their experience.
instead of changing topics suddenly,
Exactly.
that shows you were actually listening.
Right.
I think another important part of conversation is empathy.
Definitely.
How does empathy improve communication?
Empathy means trying to understand another person's feelings and perspective.
So not only hearing their words.
Exactly. You also think about what they might be experiencing.
For example, if someone says they are tired, you don't immediately give advice.
Right? Sometimes people don't need solutions. They just want someone to understand.
That's a very common situation.
Yeah, many communication problems happen because people respond too quickly.
They want to fix the problem,
Exactly. But sometimes the best response is simply showing support.
like saying, "That sounds really difficult."
Yes, simple words can make people feel understood.
That's something everyone can practice.
Definitely.
Now let's talk about conversations in English. Many English learners struggle with this.
Yeah, a lot of learners know grammar and vocabulary, but feel nervous during real conversations.
Why do you think that happens?
Because real conversations are unpredictable.
Textbooks usually have clear examples.
Exactly, but real people don't follow a textbook.
They change topics, use expressions, and speak naturally.
Right.
So how can English learners improve their conversation skills?
They need more exposure to real conversations.
Listening to podcasts, videos, and conversations.
Exactly. They need to hear how people actually communicate.
And they need to practice responding.
Yes, speaking practice is essential.
Even simple conversations help.
Definitely.
I think many learners also worry too much about making mistakes.
Yeah, they stop themselves because they want every sentence to be perfect.
But that can make conversations difficult.
Exactly. Real communication is more important than perfect grammar.
So it's okay to make mistakes.
Of course, the goal is to connect with people.
Not to pass a grammar test.
Exactly.
Another useful skill is learning common conversation phrases.
Yes, having some natural expressions ready can make speaking easier.
For example,
Things like "that's interesting," "tell me more about that," or "I've never thought about it that way."
these expressions help continue conversations.
Exactly.
They give you time to think too.
Right.
So becoming a better conversationalist is not about talking more.
Exactly. It's about listening better, asking better questions, and creating a comfortable environment.
That's a great summary.
Anyone can improve their conversations by practicing these small skills.
And better conversations create stronger relationships.
Exactly. Communication is not about saying more, it's about understanding more.
I think that's a great place to finish this part.
Yeah, a good conversation is not about being the most interesting person in the room.
It's about making the other person feel comfortable, respected, and understood.
Exactly.
Have you ever had a moment when you knew exactly what you wanted to say, but when you opened your mouth, the words just didn't come out the way you wanted?
Oh, definitely. Actually, I think that happens to almost everyone. You have a clear idea in your head, but somehow it becomes difficult to explain it.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling. Your thoughts seem very organized before you speak, but then suddenly everything feels mixed together.
Exactly. It's like your brain has a complete picture, but your words only show small pieces of that picture.
That's a really good way to describe it.
And honestly, I've experienced that many times. Especially when I needed to explain something important, I would think, I know what I mean, so why can't I explain it clearly?
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, and it's even more common when people are speaking another language.
Right, English learners often say, "I know the answer in my language, but I don't know how to say it in English."
Exactly. They are not lacking ideas. They are struggling with expressing those ideas.
So communication is not only about knowing information.
Right? It's also about organizing your thoughts.
That's interesting because many people think good speakers are just naturally talented.
Yeah, people often look at someone who speaks clearly and think, That person is just good at talking.
But there is usually a process behind it.
Exactly, clear communication is a skill. You can practice it.
So where should people start?
I think the first thing is learning how to organize your ideas before speaking.
What do you mean by organize?
Well, many people try to say everything at once. They have 5 different ideas, and they want to explain all of them immediately.
That can become confusing.
Exactly, both for the speaker and the listener.
I've definitely seen that happen. Someone starts explaining something, then suddenly moves to another topic, and after a few minutes you're thinking, wait, what are we talking about?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the speaker usually understands everything because it's clear in their own mind.
But the listener doesn't have that background.
Exactly. Good communication means helping the other person follow your thinking.
So you need to build a path for them.
That's a great way to say it. Imagine you're guiding someone through a new place. You wouldn't just say, go there, without directions.
You would explain the steps.
Right? Communication works the same way.
I think one useful skill is learning how to explain things step by step.
Definitely. Instead of giving someone a huge amount of information, you can break it into smaller parts.
For example, if you're explaining why you changed jobs, you don't need to tell the entire story from the beginning.
Exactly. You can start with the main reason, then add details.
Something like, I changed jobs because I wanted more opportunities to grow. My previous job was comfortable, but I felt ready for a new challenge.
Yes, that's clear because the listener immediately understands the main idea.
Then they can ask questions if they want more details.
Exactly.
I think another problem is that people sometimes use too many complicated words.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
They think sounding intelligent means using difficult language.
But actually, clear communication is often simple communication.
That's a great point.
The goal is not to make people think, wow, that person uses impressive words.
The goal is for people to understand you.
Exactly.
That's especially important for English learners.
Definitely. Some learners spend a lot of time trying to find advanced vocabulary, but sometimes a simple sentence is much more effective.
For example, instead of searching for a very formal word, you can use a common word that everyone understands.
Right, natural communication is usually simple and direct.
I think another challenge is expressing opinions.
Yeah, sharing opinions can feel difficult, especially when you are worried about other people's reactions.
Especially if your opinion is different.
Exactly.
Some people avoid expressing their thoughts because they don't want conflict.
That's true, but having a different opinion doesn't automatically create conflict.
It depends on how you express it.
Exactly, you can disagree respectfully.
How?
Instead of saying, you're wrong, you can say, I see your point, but I have a slightly different view.
That sounds much more friendly.
Right, the message is still clear, but the tone creates a better conversation.
So communication is not only about the words, it's also about the attitude behind the words.
Exactly.
I think many arguments happen because people focus on proving they are right.
Yeah, sometimes people enter a conversation like they are entering a competition.
They want to win.
Right, but communication is not about winning. It's about understanding.
That's a big difference.
When your goal is understanding, you become more willing to listen.
And you become less defensive.
Exactly.
Let's talk about explaining feelings. That's also difficult for many people.
Yeah, especially because emotions are not always easy to describe.
Some people know they feel bad, but they don't know why.
Right, or they know something is bothering them, but they don't know how to explain it.
Then they might become quiet or frustrated.
Exactly.
So how can people communicate feelings better?
I think they need to be specific.
Can you give an example?
Instead of saying, you never care about me, you could say, I felt ignored when I was talking and you were looking at your phone.
That's very different.
Yeah, the second sentence explains the situation instead of attacking the person.
So people are more likely to listen.
Exactly.
That's useful for relationships.
Very useful. Whether it's with friends, family, or coworkers, clear communication prevents many misunderstandings.
I think people sometimes expect others to understand their feelings automatically.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
They think, If this person really knows me, they should understand.
But nobody can read minds.
That's true.
Sometimes the most caring thing you can do is explain yourself clearly.
That takes courage, though.
It does, because being honest means making yourself vulnerable.
But it can create stronger relationships.
Exactly.
Another thing I find interesting is that good communicators often pause before speaking.
Yes, a short pause can make a big difference.
Some people think pauses make them look uncertain,
But actually, pauses often show that you are thinking carefully.
instead of just reacting.
Exactly.
That's probably important during difficult conversations.
Definitely. When emotions are high, taking a moment can prevent saying something you regret.
I think we all have moments when we reacted too quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone has said something in frustration and later thought, I wish I had explained that differently.
That feeling is very familiar.
Yeah, learning to slow down is part of becoming a better communicator.
So if someone wants to express their ideas more clearly, what are some practical things they can practice?
First, know your main message.
Before speaking,
Exactly. Ask yourself, what is the one thing I want this person to understand?
that helps avoid unnecessary information.
Right.
What else?
Use examples. Examples make ideas easier to understand.
Because people can imagine them.
Exactly.
And listen to the other person's response.
Yes, communication is a two-way process.
You don't just send information and stop.
Right, you adjust based on how the other person understands you.
I think that's a skill many people forget.
Yeah, communication is not a speech. It's an interaction.
That's probably why the best conversations feel natural.
Exactly. Both people are paying attention and building the conversation together.
So expressing yourself clearly is not about talking more.
Right, it's about knowing what matters and sharing it in a way others can understand.
That sounds simple, but it takes practice.
Definitely, but the good thing is anyone can improve.
You can practice in everyday conversations.
Exactly. Every conversation is an opportunity to become better.
I think that's a good place to finish this part.
Yeah, clear communication is not about having perfect words. It's about making your thoughts easier for others to understand.
And when people understand each other better, relationships become stronger.
Exactly.
You know, we've talked about everyday conversations, sharing ideas, and expressing ourselves clearly. But I think there is another area where communication becomes really challenging.
You mean difficult conversations.
Exactly. The conversations that make people nervous before they even start.
Yeah, those conversations where you think, I know I need to say something, but I don't know how the other person will react.
That feeling is very real.
Definitely. It could be talking to a coworker about a problem, discussing something uncomfortable with a family member, or telling someone that you disagree with them.
And many people try to avoid these conversations completely.
Yeah, sometimes people think avoiding conflict means keeping peace.
But does it really solve the problem?
Usually not. Sometimes avoiding a difficult conversation only makes the problem bigger.
Because the issue stays there.
Exactly. Maybe you feel frustrated, the other person doesn't understand what's happening, and eventually the emotions become stronger.
So sometimes having the conversation early is actually healthier.
Right, a respectful conversation can prevent bigger problems later.
But why are difficult conversations so uncomfortable?
I think one reason is that people are afraid of emotional reactions.
They worry the other person will get angry or disappointed.
Exactly. Nobody wants to feel rejected or misunderstood.
So we naturally want to protect ourselves.
Yes, but protecting yourself doesn't always mean staying silent.
That's an interesting point.
Sometimes being honest in a respectful way is actually a way of protecting a relationship.
Because the relationship has a chance to improve.
Exactly.
Let's talk about disagreements. A lot of people think disagreement means something is wrong.
Yeah, but disagreement is actually normal.
Really?
Of course, two people can have different experiences, different values, and different ways of thinking.
So having different opinions doesn't mean one person is bad.
Exactly.
I think the problem starts when people take disagreement personally.
Yes, they hear, I disagree with your idea as I don't respect you.
But those are completely different things.
Right? A person's opinion is not the same as their identity.
That's an important distinction.
You can respect someone and still have a different perspective.
So, how do we express disagreement in a healthy way?
First, try to understand before trying to convince.
That sounds difficult for many people.
Yeah, because when we disagree, our first instinct is often to defend our own opinion.
We immediately think about our response.
Exactly. We are preparing our argument instead of listening.
So, the first step is slowing down.
Right? You can say something like, I understand why you see it that way.
That doesn't mean you agree.
Exactly. It simply shows that you are listening.
That small sentence can change the whole tone of the conversation.
Yes, people become less defensive when they feel heard.
I think that's something many people forget.
Yeah, sometimes people don't need you to agree with them. They just want to know that you understand them.
That's true.
Feeling understood is a very powerful human need.
Let's talk about criticism. Giving feedback can also be difficult.
Definitely. Many people avoid giving feedback because they don't want to hurt someone's feelings.
But sometimes feedback is necessary.
Right? Especially at work or in relationships.
So, how can we give criticism in a better way?
The key is focusing on the behavior, not attacking the person.
Can you give an example?
Instead of saying, you're careless, you could say, I noticed this report had a few mistakes. Maybe we can review it together next time.
That feels much more helpful.
Exactly. One version creates shame, the other creates improvement.
That's a big difference.
Good communication should help people move forward, not make them feel smaller.
What about receiving criticism?
That can be even harder.
Because nobody likes hearing negative things about themselves.
Right? Our first reaction is often to defend ourselves.
We want to explain why we did something.
Exactly.
But maybe we should listen first.
Yes, take a moment and ask yourself, is there something useful here?
Even if the feedback is uncomfortable.
Especially then, sometimes uncomfortable feedback helps us grow.
Of course, not all criticism is useful.
That's true. You also need judgment. Some feedback comes from a good place and some doesn't.
So you don't need to accept every opinion about yourself.
Exactly. Listen, think, and decide what is valuable.
That's a very balanced approach.
Yeah,
Another difficult situation is dealing with angry people.
that's a big one.
What should we do when someone becomes emotional?
The first thing is not to match their emotion.
Meaning, don't become angry too.
Exactly. If two people are angry, the conversation usually becomes a fight.
So someone needs to stay calm.
Right? A calm response can change the direction of the conversation.
That's easier said than done.
Definitely, it requires practice.
What can someone say in that situation?
Something simple like, I understand that you're frustrated. Let's talk about what happened.
That sounds much better than saying, calm down,
Exactly. Telling someone to calm down usually makes them more upset.
because they feel ignored.
Right? First acknowledge the emotion, then discuss the problem.
That's a useful strategy.
Yeah,
I think another challenge is apologizing.
absolutely.
Some people find it really difficult to say sorry.
Yeah, they think apologizing means losing or admitting they are a bad person.
But that's not true,
Not at all. A sincere apology shows maturity.
because you are taking responsibility.
Exactly.
What makes an apology meaningful?
A good apology is specific.
What does that mean?
Instead of just saying, sorry, you explain what you understand happened.
For example, I'm sorry I interrupted you earlier. I realize I didn't give you a chance to finish.
Exactly, that shows awareness.
And then you can talk about how to improve.
Right.
I think many conflicts continue because people focus on proving who is right.
Yeah, sometimes both people are more interested in winning than solving the problem.
But after the argument, both people still have the same problem.
Exactly.
So the goal should be finding a solution.
Right, ask, how can we make this better, instead of who is wrong.
That question changes the conversation.
It really does.
Let's talk about boundaries. That's also part of communication.
Definitely.
Some people have trouble saying no,
Yeah, they worry about disappointing others.
so they agree to things they don't really want to do.
Exactly. Then they become stressed or frustrated.
How can people communicate boundaries?
Be clear and respectful.
For example,
You can say, I appreciate you asking, but I'm not able to do that right now.
that sounds polite but firm.
Exactly. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't care about people.
It means you also respect your own needs.
Right.
I think this is something many people need to learn.
Definitely.
So if we summarize difficult conversations, what are the main ideas?
Stay calm, listen first, speak honestly, and focus on solving the problem.
Not attacking the person.
Exactly.
And remember that disagreement doesn't have to destroy relationships.
Right. Sometimes difficult conversations actually make relationships stronger because people understand each other better.
That's a good point.
Avoiding every difficult conversation may feel comfortable, but learning how to handle them gives you more confidence.
Because you know you can deal with uncomfortable situations.
Exactly.
I think that's a great place to finish this part.
Yeah, good communication is not about avoiding problems. It's about handling problems with respect and understanding.
And that's a skill everyone can improve.
Definitely.
So we've talked about starting conversations, expressing ideas clearly, and handling difficult conversations. But communication is not something we learn once and finish. It's a skill that we can keep improving throughout our lives.
Yeah, I think that's something many people don't realize. They often think, I'm just not a good communicator, as if it's a fixed personality trait.
Like some people are naturally good at talking, and some people are not.
Exactly. But actually, communication is a skill. Some people may have more experience, but anyone can become better with practice.
That's a really encouraging idea.
Yeah, you don't need to become the most outgoing person in the room. You just need to learn how to connect with people better.
I like that because being a good communicator doesn't mean you have to talk all the time.
Right, some of the best communicators I know are actually quiet people.
Really?
Yeah, because they observe, they listen, and when they speak, their words usually have meaning.
That's interesting. So communication is not about personality type.
Exactly. An introverted person can be an excellent communicator.
Because communication is about understanding people.
Right.
So if someone wants to improve their communication skills, what should they practice first?
I would say start with awareness.
Awareness.
Yeah, pay attention to how you communicate.
What kind of things should people notice?
Things like, do I listen enough? Do I interrupt people? Do I explain my ideas clearly? Do I react emotionally?
So before changing something, you need to notice it.
Exactly.
That's true for many skills.
Yeah, you can't improve something you don't pay attention to.
I think another useful habit is asking people for feedback.
Definitely. Feedback can help us see things we don't notice ourselves.
But some people feel uncomfortable asking for feedback,
Yeah, because it feels like we are asking people to point out our weaknesses.
which can feel a little scary.
Exactly. But the right kind of feedback helps us grow.
What does good feedback look like?
Good feedback is specific and helpful.
Not just saying, you're bad at communication.
Right, that doesn't help much.
Instead, someone might say, sometimes you explain your ideas quickly, so slowing down might help people understand you better.
Exactly. That gives you something practical to improve.
I think slowing down is actually a great communication skill.
Definitely.
Why?
Because many people speak too quickly when they are nervous.
Especially when they want to explain something important.
Exactly. Their thoughts move faster than the listener can follow.
So slowing down gives people time to understand.
Right, and it also makes you appear more confident.
That's interesting.
Think about someone giving a presentation. A person who speaks calmly usually seems more prepared than someone who rushes through every sentence.
Even if both people know the same information.
Exactly, delivery matters.
Let's talk about confidence in communication.
Sure,
A lot of people are afraid to speak because they worry about being judged,
yeah, that fear is very common.
especially in another language.
Definitely, English learners often think, what if I make a mistake? Or what if people don't understand me?
And then they choose not to speak
Right, but avoiding speaking prevents improvement.
because you never get the experience.
Exactly.
So how can people become more confident?
Start with small situations.
Small situations.
Yeah, you don't need to suddenly give a speech in front of hundreds of people.
You can start with simple conversations.
Exactly. Say hello to someone new, ask a question, share a small opinion.
Small actions build confidence,
Right? Confidence comes from experience.
not from waiting until you feel ready.
Exactly.
That's actually similar to learning English.
Yeah, many learners wait until their English is perfect before speaking.
But perfection never really comes.
Exactly. You improve by using the language.
The same with communication.
Right.
Another thing I think matters is being genuinely interested in people.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because people can usually feel whether your interest is real.
That's true.
If you're only waiting for your chance to talk, people notice.
But if you truly want to understand someone, the conversation feels different.
Exactly.
So becoming a better communicator also means becoming more curious.
Yes, curious people ask better questions and have deeper conversations.
They don't just talk about themselves.
Right.
I think there's another skill that people often forget: adapting.
Yeah, adapting is very important.
What does that mean in communication?
It means understanding that different people communicate differently.
For example,
Some people like detailed explanations. Some people prefer short answers. Some people need time to think before responding.
so you shouldn't communicate with everyone in exactly the same way.
Exactly.
That's a skill people use at work a lot.
Definitely. Good leaders are usually good communicators because they know how to communicate with different types of people.
They understand that one style doesn't work for everyone.
Right.
I think patience is also important,
Very important.
especially when someone doesn't understand you immediately.
Yeah, sometimes people repeat themselves louder or become frustrated.
But speaking louder doesn't always solve the problem.
Exactly. Sometimes you need to explain differently.
Maybe use another example.
Right? Good communicators adjust instead of blaming.
That's a very mature approach.
Yeah,
Let's talk about digital communication too. Today, many conversations happen through messages.
that's true.
Do you think communication skills are different online?
A little bit. Online communication removes many things, like facial expressions and tone of voice.
So misunderstandings can happen more easily.
Exactly.
Because a short message can sound cold, even if that wasn't the intention.
Right.
So what can people do?
Be clear and considerate.
Maybe add more context.
Exactly. Sometimes one extra sentence can prevent misunderstanding.
For example, instead of just saying, "We need to talk," you could say, "Hey, I'd like to discuss something when you have time."
Exactly. The second message feels much less stressful.
That's a small change, but it makes a big difference.
Communication is often about small details.
Looking back at everything we discussed, I think the biggest lesson is that communication is about connection,
I agree.
not about sounding smart,
Not about always having the perfect answer.
not about winning every conversation.
Exactly. It's about understanding people and helping people understand you.
That's a simple idea, but it affects so many parts of life.
Definitely. Better communication can improve your relationships, your career, and even your confidence.
Because when you can express yourself, you feel more capable.
Right.
And when you understand others, you build stronger connections.
Exactly.
Before we finish today's episode, I want to ask you one final question.
Sure.
If someone wants to become a better communicator starting today, what is one thing they can do?
I would say, listen more carefully.
That's your first suggestion.
Yeah, because when you truly listen, everything else improves. Your questions become better, your responses become better, and people feel respected.
I like that.
And after listening, practice expressing yourself honestly and clearly.
So listen with curiosity and speak with confidence.
Exactly.
I think that's a great message to end with.
Yeah, communication is not about being perfect. It's about being willing to understand and be understood.
Thank you for listening to our conversation today.
We hope this episode helps you become a better communicator, one conversation at a time.
Remember, every conversation is an opportunity to learn something new.
Keep listening, keep practicing, and keep connecting with people.
See you next time.
Take care.